We have major breaking news today out of Washington, D.C. Senator Rand Paul from Kentucky, as most of you know by now, forced the release of Anthony Fauci's diaries. And some of the contents that have been surfaced are absolutely insane. And there's a very real shot he may be arrested and eventually, hopefully, go to prison. Before I get into the criminal elements, though, I just want to read you some of this stuff, some of the insane parts. And this, by the way, is from the New York Times, right? Not a right-wing publication. This is from, the failing New York Times. Okay. So this, by the way, already proves that he lied in front of Congress, right? If anybody's lying here, Senator, it is you, Dr. Fauci said in response to the questions from Senator Paul in 2021. And this had to do with the lab leak theory. But here's the crazy part. At the outset of the pandemic, the public health establishment dismissed the idea of a lab leak as a conspiracy theory. Fauci wrote as much on January 31st, 2020. There have been conspiracy theories that the virus was given gain of function by inserting mutations and deliberately or accidentally released in Wuhan. But the diary, echoing previously released emails, reflects that Dr. Fauci was uncertain. To put it in less flattering terms, the diary shows that this guy was completely lying. He was completely full of it. When a respected scientist expressed concerns that the virus might have indeed been engineered, Fauci convened a conference call with leading virologists and evolutionary biologists who debated the idea. It was not total agreement on the call, Dr. Fauci wrote in the diary. Of the 11 scientists, not including Dr. Fauci, just 2 were convinced that the virus emerged naturally. He was lying to everyone. That is not an exaggeration. That is not an opinion. Fauci was lying to the American people. There is no doubt the diaries have revealed that. There is no way to argue a case other than that. He did not think this was some fringe conspiracy theory. No, he knew that there was a very real shot, and actually in this case, that the scientific consensus was not around the theory that it was, naturally occurring, but rather that there was a very realistic shot. It did come from gain of function research from a lab leak. And here's the even crazier part, right? This guy, I'll get to the criminal aspects I know in a second, but I think this is the more interesting part, right? This is the guy that led to America being shut down, that honestly led to the cost of living issues that we're having today, with hyperinflation. This guy is just a complete nutcase. It is not hyperbole to say that today I am the most famous and talked about person in the country and one of the most recognizable in the world, he wrote, after a very flattering front page story in the Washington Post. The entries were also full of references to Hollywood stars, some of whom seemed starstruck over him, right? Barbara Streisand called her vaccine advice, right? And he talked with her further. Joanne Bates painted a portrait of him. I don't even know who that is. Julia Roberts introduced him as an award ceremony. Listen to this. She is so charming, natural, fun, and amazingly beautiful, Dr. Fauci wrote of Mrs. Roberts. When my image came up on the screen, he added, she gasped and said that every time she sees me, her throat gets dry and she gets nervous. And I think Senator Paul said it best. While America buried loved ones, Fauci was counting headlines that doted over him. Absolutely disgusting. All right. So now, this gets to the, right there. Yeah. This gets to the sort of criminal elements. And as you can see on Polymarket, there is a very, very realistic chance. It was at almost, 6% chance, and now it has almost doubled the probability of him being arrested. And I think that could happen, right? As Rand Paul says, if Anthony Fauci comes before my committee tomorrow and perjures himself, his preemptive pardon from Joe Biden will not protect him. Remember, nothing he did prior to Joe Biden leaving office can hold him criminally liable. Joe Biden, of course, pardoned Anthony Fauci on his way out the door. Really controversial. Kind of shows there was a little something up. And now none of that is unfortunately admissible in a court of law. But I'll play you the clip from RFK Jr. talking more about this. I think you're really going to want to look at this. I honestly think it's very, very possible this occurs. Anyway, here you go. Here's the clip.
He's going to testify in front of Rand Paul's committee this week. He has immunity against all of the things that he did prior to President Biden signing, or the electronic pen signing his pardon, but he could perjure himself now. Well, there are many things that he said that we know are lies, and Rand Paul presumably is going to ask him about those things. And if he lies again, then he could be subject to perjury prosecution.
Of course, if Biden hadn't pardoned him, we would have a real shot of getting him on something. It's a little bit harder now, but it is not impossible. And when the president of the United States goes this hard on you, you've got to be a little worried. Here's Trump. I'll play a couple clips from Trump because you got to see this. Here's Trump reacting to these diaries coming out. Here you go. Here's the clip.
If you remember early on when it first came, I always said it came from the Wuhan labs. I never changed my tune on that. I think he said something different. He was a much bigger player in the Biden administration. I grew tired of him. He was, you remember that, he wanted to close everything down. I allowed it to be up to the governors, and most or many of the Republican governors didn't want to close. And, being somewhat of a federalist, the federalist theory is let the governors make the decision, and we let them. The blue states were mostly closed, and the red states were open, or they started to open very fast.
He's absolutely correct. Here's another clip of Trump saying why he didn't listen to Fauci. I think you're going to want to see this. Have a look.
In his private journals, he has some very unkind things to say about you. He disagreed with your approach, was different than his.
Because he wanted to close everything down, and I didn't.
Absolutely. But given what you know now...
Had I taken his advice, the whole country would have been closed down, and much of the country was open because I didn't close it down. What I did do, though, is with Operation Warp Speed, is we got things done that nobody's ever seen in terms of all of the gear necessary. And we learned that the cupboards were bare. When I took over, we had none of this. We didn't have the ventilators.
I know.
We didn't have anything. We ended up becoming the #1 ventilator producer, and we were supplying ventilators to other countries by the time we got going. And we did a great job. No, but I was not a believer because he said everybody has to wear a mask. Then he said, don't wear a mask. You remember it was a whole thing. Wear them, don't wear them. I said, what are you doing? He started off saying don't wear them. Then he said wear them. Then he said don't wear them. And I lost a lot of respect for him during the period of time. Right. But I inherited him. He's been there since the 1980s. I mean, he was a guy that was there that I inherited. And with time, I didn't mind him. I didn't find him to be bad, personally as a person. But I didn't agree with what he was saying or what he was doing. And when Biden came in, he inherited him. And he gave him a tremendously high position.
Anyway, this is absolutely insane stuff. I hope you did enjoy the video. If you did, make sure to subscribe down below if you're new. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned, and I'll see you in the next one.